Welcome back to FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow. Thank you for joining us. We are speaking with the candidates running in a number of races this year as we head to the 2020 election. But one that's of particular interest as we head to the state primary is the race for the Massachusetts 4th Congressional District, a seat that is to be vacated by Congressman Joseph Kennedy. There are 11 candidates running in the race, 9 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And I'm pleased to be joined by one of the 2 Republicans here this afternoon, Julie Hall. Julie, thank you for joining us. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. Yes.
Let me just get right into it, Julie. For those people who may not know much about you, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for Congress.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Julie Hall, and I'm a retired Air Force colonel. I'm a single mom. I raised my son as a single mom while I was in the military. I was in the military for 30 years. I started out in 1978 as an enlisted and made it all the way up through the ranks to colonel, which is the highest rank that you can make before general. So, you know, it was a difficult journey for a woman at that time. And I say that, you know, not for the pat on the back, although it is, you know, an honor to have done that, but just to show my personality and that I'm a fighter and I don't let things get in my way. I don't let challenges get in my way. I look for challenges and I try to overcome those. So I grew up in a family in Walpole, and I have to keep reminding myself when I say I'm one of 7 brothers and sisters. I've said on other interviews that I had 7 brothers and sisters, and I'm sure they're trying to figure out, like, where's the 8th one? I am one of 7 brothers and sisters. Okay. So my parents worked, my father in particular worked 2 jobs. My mother also worked as a nurse, and she worked the swing shift at night and came home just in time to get us off to school. So we're very much of a working class family. Myself, I started working when I was 14 years old up at, here you go, here's one for you, Sullivan Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, okay. So up at Sullivan Stadium, I started working. I got my worker's permit at 14 and saved up all my money and ended up going to Massasoit Community College. I graduated from there and went on to the military and spent 30 wonderful years in the military. I was a behavioral health specialist for about 6.5 years. So that's very helpful when you're dealing with people. I don't want to, you know, but it is just very helpful when you're dealing with people, because when you're running for office, it can be, you know, can be a little bit stressful. People are coming at you from a lot of different directions and you have to sort of figure them out very quickly. And then for the rest of the 24 years or so or more, I was a hospital administrator. So that's helpful from the standpoint of the military is one of the largest totally taxpayer funded healthcare systems. So I think when we start talking about single payer sources, single payer systems, I have a lot of knowledge about that. I have a lot of knowledge to bring on that. So, you know, that's going to be very helpful, I think, as when we move forward.
Yeah. It was interesting in speaking with the 9 Democrats in the race. They're all from the northern part of the district,
Yes.
Brookline, Newton,
Yes.
Wellesley. You're in the Attleboro area.
Yes.
Dave Rosa, the other Republican, is closer to Fall River in Dighton. Do you think there's an advantage to not being up with where a lot of those other candidates are and potentially splitting some votes up there?
Absolutely. And not only, I think geographically, but in, I want to say symbolically, I think it's very important because this particular area, what I call the lower 32, if you would, the lower 32 has been underrepresented, if I can get that out, for years. You know, this is a group of working class people that have great professional careers, but, you know, we all started working and work for a living, to get our kids through school. And I just think it's a different culture down this way. So symbolically, that's why I'm running. So if we want to get right into that, when people ask me, why am I running? There's a couple of reasons. I'm definitely for law and order. So that's one of the things. I'm a veteran. So I believe in the United States of America. I believe in the opportunity that we have here. I've been to other countries before. And so we have a lot, even though people think that there's still a lot of improvements, which I agree there are, believe me, this country is a whole lot better than a lot of the countries that I've been to. And we should certainly be grateful for the freedoms that we have here in that country. So that's one of the reasons why I'm running. But another is because of my background. You know, I came from a middle-class family. I came from a working-class family. I think everybody sort of, you know, wants to work hard, and they want to give their children three things that I think, and this is what I think transcends being a Republican or a Democrat. You know, those three things is you want a safe neighborhood, a safe neighborhood. You want a great school for your kids to go to school in, and everybody wants a nice profession. So, you know, if you look at those three things, I don't think anybody can disagree that those are the three things that people would want most. And that sort of transcends, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of the area here in District 4. So hopefully I'll be able to represent those people, because I am one of those people. That's what I am.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things about you being a veteran and your experience with hospital administration, and I want to get into, you know, healthcare specifically in a moment.
Sure.
But is there one issue that you're really passionate about that you really would like to focus on if elected
Sure.
as the member of Congress?
Yeah, I have been an advocate of the small business for since I think even probably before the military, but you know, the mom and pop businesses. I remember Walpole before it became this almost big city, and I remember Attleboro. I mean, Attleboro to us was the big city. You know, besides having all the factories here, the streets down here were lined with owners and shop owners. Everybody had their little shops, and it was, even though it was sort of a mixture of, you know, the big gold and silver and jewelry factories, but small entrepreneurs. I think that is a beautiful thing about the United States, is this is one place where a small business owner can make a lot of headway, and it's the ingenuity that they bring. We have the opportunity to do that, to have an idea, to have a thought, to hopefully raise those funds and be able to make something out of your life, make something, you know, a nice living for your family, and be able to, you know, provide a service to your community. I think that's just important to folks in that kind of a community. They want to be part of the community. So it's, to me, it's something that we've lost. I think it's something we need to get back. I've actually helped 3 small businesses here in Attleboro, and all 3 of them are still pretty much doing okay. So I feel very good about that.
You know, we're still in the throes, unfortunately, of the pandemic, COVID-19. The president has taken a lot of criticism in terms of how he's handled the crisis. What are your thoughts on how the national government has handled the crisis, and if anything, what can be done differently?
I have some strong feelings about it, because we used to exercise annually for things just like this. And being a hospital administrator and being in the military, at the rank that I was at, I had, you know, privy to what they call medical intelligence. So I knew some of the things that were going on. We would plan for these kinds of things in Washington, D.C. So this was way before any of the presidents that were currently here. And so one of the agencies we relied on heavily was the Public Health Service. I was a little disappointed to see that the Public Health Service did not take a much larger role right from the beginning. They are very, very good at being able to build out these hospitals. That in conjunction with, and I kept on saying, bring out the National Guard, and not from a military standpoint, but I know that the medics in the military and the Guard are very well trained to do this, to deploy. So I kept kind of sitting there and saying, geez, when are they gonna do this? And I think it just took a little bit. I don't know what happened to the system. There was a very well-oiled system where people would start reporting when they saw changes and they saw certain things and certain diagnoses, and these things were supposed to be feeding up to a higher level, which in my opinion would have said something's going on. And we have the technology to do this. I've seen it. I've been part of it. And so like I said, here I am now watching this play out, and being a little bit disappointed. So what I would have done is, I guess, knowing what I know, I would have gone after those people that have that knowledge a little bit quicker and been able to bring them in and start immediately getting bed expansions and so forth, immediately bringing in additional medical people, immediately bringing in the public health service, because they are trained in doing this. And when they're activated, they become a military organization. I don't know if people are aware of that, but they wear uniforms. They were originally part of the Navy, if I'm not mistaken. They reminded me all the time, being in the Air Force, that they were the first military. They were very proud of that. So that's what I would do differently. And I guess maybe that just comes from the knowledge, like the insider knowledge that I have about what happens during a pandemic.
Let's dovetail a little bit into healthcare. You mentioned that you were part of one of the largest public health single payer system, if you will, here in the United States in terms of military and the medical there. What are your thoughts on how we're handling healthcare? President Trump has talked about either lessening or getting rid of Obamacare. What are your thoughts in terms of how our healthcare future should look?
Sure. I mean, I always talk about having a hybrid system. I think we actually do have that right now, where we have a socialized medical system. We have a taxpayer-funded medical system. I think that's appropriate. One of the difficulties that we have is, and again, this is where I think probably we're more fiscally conservative people, and I am a fiscal conservative, but when it comes to healthcare, I certainly understand it. This is where I think that we're not paying enough. The doctors and nurses, or the medical providers, are not getting paid enough for those visits that they're getting. A lot of this care is delivered at community hospitals that have to compete against these other big hospitals that are, using the capital market, if you would, to spread their risk, is the best way to put it. So we need to really do that, take a very good look at funding the taxpayer-funded system a little bit better, expanding it perhaps. Again, I know there's probably some fiscal conservative eyes rolling there, but that's what I believe should happen. And yet the rest of it all should be in a competitive manner, because it's that competition between providers to get the volume. And that's what this is all about. So the more volume a provider gets, that's how they make their money back. So those two things I think are very important. I think the competition is important. Information technology, essential. It's essential. You've got to know how, how a person has been treated previously. We have to be able to share that information. Information technology is going to be huge in allowing our providers to do what they want to do best. All they want to do is take care of patients. That's it. That's what they want to do.
Prior to COVID-19, the economy was doing well. The stock market was at all-time highs. Unemployment was low. Those on the other side of the aisle will talk about that even though President Trump instituted tax cuts across the board, that there's an income gap between those at the higher end and those at the lower end. So I guess my question is there a way to shorten that gap, if you believe there is one? And also, what does that translate in terms of creating good paying jobs for our country?
Sure, right. I think it's important to try to create those good paying jobs, but you have to let the market do that. I think putting more regulations on businesses and the business in itself. I'm not a big fan of government intervention. You need to let entrepreneurs drive these things, because when you do, that's how you create more jobs. They come up with new technologies. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example that we talk about quite often is the hydropower and wind power. Those are two things that I think we definitely need to move forward towards. We have an opportunity right now where we have enough, I guess, stored up power, if you would, that we have an opportunity now to move forward with some research on that. But again, you have to let the market drive those so that folks can come up with new ways and new technologies. And as they do this, it'll make that power less expensive. One of the things, if you don't do that, it's expensive. And I think that there are people that would love to do the right thing. They'd love to buy a Prius or a brand new car and, be able to contribute to reducing, climate or, pollution and things like that. But they have to make decisions about their family right now. So those are things I sort of look at. And again, it's like, that's how you have to create it. On the bottom end, and I've talked about this when I was on my city council, the earned income tax credit is something I look at, because if you start bringing people up to a different level and they're not, the first thing that happens, you go over a certain level in taxes or a certain level in pay, and now all of a sudden you're going to get taxed. What happens to that person? You're almost slapping them right back down again. So we've got to figure that out too. How to allow people to go forward and not be hit with taxes. And it's usually the people at the bottom that it hurts the most. So that's one of the things I look at, is the earned income tax credit and reforming that.
Yeah. You talked about how the market should dictate how jobs are fostered and how they grow. Is there any role for the federal government at all in creating jobs? And one thing that comes to mind is something that's been in discussion recently, and that is improving our infrastructure.
Yep. So yeah, the infrastructure definitely needs to be improved, and obviously the bridges. This is what keeps America going. In the trucking industry, we really haven't had anything that replaces that. And our roads are getting old, our bridges are getting old. We have trains that go cross country too, all of that stuff. So if that was to ever become, and we see it, it happens. It's devastating when something shuts down like that. So we do need to definitely put money into that and create jobs. But I think the other part of that is, it's a combination. And you asked about the federal government. Yes, the federal government does have a role. I think part of that role is tax reform. To be able to look specifically at some tax reform, especially for businesses. And again, I'm going to hit right back to the small business again. Those poor folks are out there struggling, and they get hit, with all the same taxes as, if you're a big corporation, we need the big corporations. I'm going to just say, because they're, I'm not going to say, I know people say, oh, we need to get rid of the big corporations. You need to have that kind of money coming into the country that allows us to be stable. But the small business owner, to me, is what really is the focus of to be an American, in my opinion. And we need to help that person. The only way we can help that person is to come up with some different ways of less taxes, is what I'm going to say, less regulations, those kinds of things, and help them be able to grow a little bit quicker and stabler, I guess is the best way to put it.
There's a lot of other topics I want to get to, so I'm going to be a little more rapid fire here if we could. That's fine. No, that's fine. There's been a lot of talk in terms of education. President Trump, of course, wants all of our schools to open in the face of COVID-19 this fall, and that's sort of a different discussion. But in general, what role, if there is a role or more of a role, should the federal government take in terms of providing funding and guidance for K through 12, as well as public higher education?
Yeah, and well, I know there's a whole formula that comes down and as how schools are supposed to be funded. There are some flaws, as far as I can see, in the formula itself. So that's one of the things I think that they need to discuss, really, is to take a good hard look at that formula, because that formula that they use translates all the way down to the cities, to the state, and then to the cities. I've been on the other end of that as a city councilor, and how that formula gets done, and how it doesn't fully fund for some of the things that it needs to be fully funded for. And then the city has to step in and try to mediate that. And that puts the city and the school system at odds sometimes, and that should never happen. So I think that's one of the things that needs to be looked at, is to see if we could shore that up a little bit. And there needs to be more money put into it, then there needs to be more money put into it. I look at, I'm a fan of, I went to community college, but I'm a huge fan of VOTEC. Vocational technology, education, arts, and music. People look at, I've went to public education, but VOTEC is really the way to go. What we need to do is we need to have a system, and you can use it on a federal level, where we figure out what kind of skills that we need in this country to go forward, to help to keep our economy viable. And then we need to reach down, all the way down into the school systems, and find those students put money to those students, put money to those programs. That way we do a couple of things. We tell our next generation, guess what? There are jobs here for you. And number two, there's a place, and you're going to be able to stay right here in the United States to be able to do that. And we're going to value you for it because we need it.
Right. We're also at a time right now, Julie, where there's a lot of strife following the killing of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement and calls to reform police. What are your thoughts in terms of, if anything, reforming police? There's a bill that's working its way through the legislature in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, I'm an advocate of law and order. I'll say that right off the bat. Anybody that puts on a uniform and puts their life on the line, I have a great respect for what they do. Now, that being said, I've also been in that organization where people in my own organization has not quite lived up to those ethics and responsibilities that have been put in their trust. So, there's bad apples. We need to figure out who those people are. I think that needs to happen. However, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. One of the things we don't want is chaos. I have spoken to a lot of our police officers. My opinion is we need the social workers and the caseworkers, and I know this has come up, but they need to work in tandem, not independently. The reason why I say this is I'll jump back to my mental health background. I have seen how dangerous it is for someone to go to a domestic. One of those spouses is usually armed, or there's a problem going on. The last thing you want is a social worker or caseworker to be the first person to open that door. So I have problems with that. However, I think working them as a team, in my area, they have a thing called problem-oriented policing, which I think is wonderful. They do try to build that team together. And I think to do that, you need more money, not less money. So I'm not an advocate of defunding.
A lot of the issues we've talked about are really bread and butter issues that people really vote on because it's of their personal interest. However, as a member of Congress, you're also going to be dealing with foreign policy issues. How has this president handled foreign policy in your estimation, and how can we maybe do things differently?
I think that, we don't fight wars the same way we did with a lot of human beings going out there like we did in the past. Usually it's skirmishes here and there. And I'll be honest with you, don't always hear all the things that are going on out throughout the different parts of the world. Again, I think my background, I have a little bit of understanding of things that are going on still and why we're at with different countries. One of the things I tell people is watch the bouncing dollar bill, okay? If you want to find out why we are where we are, we are not going out there to bring democracy, okay? I'm going to say that right now. We're there usually because there's something that's advantageous to us in one way, shape, or form. So, the thing I can tell you is that's why we're going to be out doing things. Now, him, in terms of how he's handled things, there's been a few times where I think he's made some decisions, I think people would agree with me, where he's caused more tension or potential tension between some of those countries that we have been partners with for a long, long time. And I sort of cringe a little bit like, oh, gosh, and we've made, keep your fingers crossed that there hasn't been anything that really drastic that has happened right now. So I think every president is going to have to figure those things out. Hopefully you have a good foreign security advisor with you. And hopefully the biggest thing, you listen to those people that know better than you. So I'm saying it as delicately I possibly can is, he needs to listen sometimes a little, he needs to listen to his experts a little bit more, my opinion, just my opinion.
In the face of COVID-19, the legislature has passed here in Massachusetts, and the governor has signed a bill that will make it easier for more people to participate, primarily through a mail ballot system this year. What are your thoughts about that process in terms of allowing people who may be concerned about voting in the fall the ability to vote?
I think it's wonderful that people that are concerned about it medically have that opportunity. However, I've been reading up on this, and I don't know if people are aware of this, but they've always had that opportunity. That was a modification that was already put into our voting process early on with COVID, and it's called a a no excuse absentee ballot. So that was well before this even came up. I didn't see a necessity for this to happen, in my opinion. The other problem is that, so in other words, if you do have a medical problem, or if you don't feel like you want to go in and vote that way, you could have always applied for one. So, again, I was a little confused as to why this big push had to happen. So I'm not an advocate of, if you're a healthy person, I like the fact that I go in and put my ballot in the box. It means a lot to me. That's the only way that I can assure that my ballot and my vote is going to be counted. I can tell you from my own personal experience, we got some difficulties. And I'm saying this from my own personal experience, that there's tampering that goes on, and we have to watch out for that. And that's a major concern.
Yeah. A couple of other quick questions before I let you go. One, along with the domestic issues and the foreign policy issues we've discussed, another big complaint from voters is the partisanship that goes on in Washington, D.C. As one of 435 Congress people in Washington, how do you bridge that divide? How do you get people to work more together than they currently do?
To be honest with you, I don't think I could work any other way than working together as a team. 30 years of my life, that's what I've had to do. And you may say, well, that's, you're all in the same mission, but you're not. I mean, I have doctors, I have nurses, I had technicians, everybody there, believe me, it's almost the same thing. Everybody has their own agenda. There's things that are important to each one of those groups. And then we also had a larger system around us that have totally different missions from what we did, and yet we all had to work together. We were all sharing the same resources also. So again, I've been doing this all my life. I would never think of, it would be a rare occasion that I would make a decision without trying to consult the people that this is going to affect, number one, and to try to also get another opinion. I think that's what the beauty of this, and another reason why I'm running. We should always have two choices. It should never be just one particular viewpoint on things. It's the yin and the yang. That's what makes a good decision, is butting heads together and coming up with something that works for the majority of the people.
Finally, here's your opportunity to say a few words to the voters of Fall River and how other people can find out more about your campaign, Julie.
Sure, thank you. So first I'll talk about my campaign page, so we'll get that. So it's, I keep saying www. Everybody tells me that's old school. You don't have to say that anymore. So it's Hall, HALL for Congress, FOR Congress, and .com that you have to use. So it's hallforcongress.com. That will take you to a very beautiful campaign page. I didn't make it, so I can say that. And one of the things I think that are most important here is donations. In order to run a great campaign, you've got to have money to do it. Obviously, I'm in the lower 32, and we don't have the same money that the folks up in the north have. And so it really is a grassroots campaign. So I really, reach out to people that, if you like what I'm saying, please go on my website. You can call me. I'm very open to anybody calling me at any time and answering questions for them. I don't beat around the bush. I'll tell you the truth. You ask me a question, this is what you're going to hear. So I think that's the other thing too. I'm pretty straight when it comes to, you want an answer. I'm not going to waffle on anything. There's no reason to. You need to know who I am. That's what I say. So.
All right, Julie Hall, Republican, running for the Massachusetts 4th Congressional District. Thank you for spending time with us. All the best, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And I want to thank all of you for joining us today here at FRC Media as we talk to the candidates in the 4th Congressional District. I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great day.